Can you start a podcast with me, please? I need something to do.
Pastrnak sent it out in front of Malkin to save. They score! Elias Lindholm looks to the heavens.
Here's a chance. Potter right in, and goalie scores. Oh my, what a move by the rookie.
2-on-1. Pastrnak moving in with Marchand. Get into it. Score!
The zone. Coyle dances in. Backhand score!
Lindholm right wing corner. Pastrnak is there. He scores! David Pastrnak wins it for Boston.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Bruins Tape to Tape. I will be your host today. I am Maria from Watertown, and today's episode, we're going to be continuing in our summer-long series of player profiles. Today's focus is going to be on newest member of Bruins goaltending tandem, Michael DiPietro. But before we get going on that topic of conversation, I want to welcome in my co-host, Caroline with a K.
Hey, Maria. I'm so excited to talk about Dippy.
I know you love goalie talk, and like I love big defenseman talk.
I know. This guy, it's so funny. We called this weeks and weeks ago when we were discussing our summer player profiles. We knew we were going to have to talk about Michael DiPietro because at some point, once the Boston Bruins were to say goodbye to Joonas Korpisalo, which at the time we did not know when that was going to happen, we knew we were going to have to talk about DiPietro because it was pretty clear to me, and I think to you as well, that the Bruins organization had invested a lot of time and effort and energy into this young kid, and that he was going to be the one that they were going to call up to support Jeremy Swayman. And sure enough, even though it was already on the calendar, what happened?
This conversation was meant to be. And let's lay the foundation for this topic of conversation because, as you just alluded to, we had more than one conversation about the fact that the Bruins had been carrying both Jeremy Swayman and Joonas Korpisalo on their salary roster, and it was no longer becoming feasible to carry both of these goalies. And whether or not any of us believe some of the rampant speculation that has been coming across social feeds is that the initial potential deal to move Korpisalo was sending him to Edmonton along with, I believe, would have been Mason Lohrei with the return of Darnell Nurse. And speculation is that Joonas Korpisalo invoked his no-trade clause and said, yeah, no, I don't really want to go to Edmonton.
Thank God.
But which was fine because maybe the Bruins dodged a bullet in not getting Darnell Nurse. And I believe that's why they ultimately plucked Connor Clifton off the pile of recyclable defensemen. But Joonas...
We'll talk about him
in New York.
soon enough.
I'm glad that the deal was made during the off season rather than going into this season with still this sword hanging over the Bruins' head. So the Michael DiPietro era has officially begun. And even Don Sweeney, when asked about Michael DiPietro, said it's time to learn. And I'm not quoting, I'm just interpreting Donnie's words. Basically, time to learn if Michael DiPietro is NHL ready, NHL material. He's also earned his opportunity, and hopefully he's going to take advantage of that opportunity with the Bruins. Do we expect Jeremy Swayman's workload to go up a little bit, or are we going to try and strike a balance with giving DiPietro the opportunity to prove that he's NHL ready? But what are your thoughts on that before we get into Michael DiPietro as an AHLer?
My initial thought before even the Korpisalo trade happened, understanding that, all right, Boston is definitely going to be giving this kid a shot. We saw him play, it wasn't even a start. He covered in for Korpisalo very briefly during a game when Korpi had a puck to the head and had to go sit in a dark room for a little bit before he came back. So we did see him, and that was great. Initially, I was a little bit worried that, wow, they're going to take this risk. They're going to just give him the job. But here's the thing. When it comes to goalie development and playing goaltenders, the way that you train as a goaltender, the way that you develop as a goaltender, very different than with skaters. Goalies develop through a lot of repetition, reading live game situations, so being in games, handling that traffic, learning how to read what's in front of them, and if they make a mistake, recovering from those mistakes, and that only happens in game, and then building that confidence with start after start. So they clearly see in him a solid foundational game, a solid technical game. They would not be giving a kid without that experience this massive chance. So he's clearly got it, and he's got a hell of a story that I know we're going to get into.
We're going to get to that.
This is the next step for him. He spent time in Providence getting that degree of experience and repetition with that level of play. And quite frankly, the only way that you can then truly learn how to play the NHL game is to play in the NHL. So they are putting a lot of faith in this kid. I don't know that they will necessarily increase Jeremy Swayman's workload, nor do I think that he needs to have his workload increased. As we discussed in our goalies conversation a few weeks back, his percent of games covered was on par with other elite starting goaltenders. Connor Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger, all playing roughly the same, 65% of games. Plus, we've not loved Jeremy Swayman's work after more than 3 games straight.
Right. I think when he gets to that 5-game-in-a-row mark, you can expect the floodgates to open up.
Especially considering last season where he was doing a lot of heavy lifting. A lot of heavy lifting. Now, having a young goaltender who's inexperienced in net could also not only grow and develop him as a player, could have actually very positive motivational impacts on the players out in front of him. Because the players, if it's a good team, if it's a team with a solid, respectful culture, they're going to say, we got to bring it. We cannot expose this kid. We cannot put him in situations that are not fair. It's one thing to do that to Jeremy Swayman, because at this point, he is becoming a veteran goaltender. Hell, last season, he earned his stripes. I think it benefits everybody to put Dippy in.
And we've seen instances of that happen when Linus was on the team, where we have made, I had done it, where I would say, why does this team seem to play better in front of Jeremy?
Yeah. Even if it's not a conscious decision.
Don't leave him out there hanging to dry.
Right.
Okay?
Exactly.
That's all I ask.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's going to be good for everybody to see him in net. And I think it's great.
Well, from an organizational standpoint, you are in a very good position where you have the luxury of knowing that as an organization, the Bruins, they do a very good job of developing goalies. We can talk about their development of other young players at a different time, because I think that's subject to some concern at this point. However, when it comes to goalie, they're pretty solid. So you're not leaving yourself, I don't think, in a vulnerable position to start the season. What you've done is you've moved a salary in Joonas Korpisalo off your current roster.
Yeah.
And you're also now giving this young man an opportunity that, frankly, he deserves based on his play at the AHL level. He's won an MVP. He's won the equivalent of the Vezina Trophy at the AHL level twice now. His save percentage is off the charts.
Yeah.
This season, his save percentage was crazy.
Yeah. I think, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about his pathway, because
yes,
this
I do.
Is not just the fact that goaltenders take longer to develop, but this is a particular instance where he was impacted by two things pretty significantly: COVID and Vancouver.
Yeah. And not only that, this kiddo started off as a defenseman. And then at the ripe old age of 9, decided to switch to goaltending.
Which is actually, like, people joke, but actually it's not that it's late, but I will say the vast majority of goalies know they want to do that.
No, they want to do that right from the get-go for the most part, right?
Yeah.
He also had very sad life tragedy where he lost his mother when he was just 5 years old. And so he's become very close to his father, has a tight bond with his father, and credits his father and his now stepmother for playing a major role in his life.
Yeah.
But yes, Vancouver was not kind to him being drafted into their system, and COVID, the fan base there, it was time to get this kid out of Vancouver. And so he ended up making his way. And apparently the Canucks had, as the Bruins are now starting to accumulate, a very deep goaltender depth chart.
Which is great for an organization to have that degree of choice. It can be less great if you are one of those goaltenders. And in fact, as he got replaced or pushed down the ladder,
the depth chart list,
I didn't know this. He requested a trade.
Yeah.
That I did not know.
Yeah, so he wound up in a better place, so to speak, with the Bruins organization in 2022, 2023. Spent some time with the Maine Mariners, but he blossomed with the Providence Bruins. And as I mentioned earlier, he won back-to-back Bastion awards for being the AHL's best goaltender. He also took home a league MVP. As I said, his save percentage has been tremendous, absolutely tremendous.
Yeah.
When he got to the Providence Bruins until the end of last season's regular season.
Yeah. It's shocking to see just how effective the Bruins goalie development program is with him as like the poster child. We don't typically see or hear these stories of goalies coming in with his particular situation. He was on the taxi squad for Vancouver. If folks remember already, my goodness, it's been 6 years, but teams were allowed to have a taxi squad of extra players who practiced with the club, and they were available in case of injuries or COVID outbreaks. And because he was on that taxi squad for most of that shortened 2020-21 season, he had practice with the goalie coach, but he barely played any games. He was in 4 AHL games because the thing is, if you were on the taxi squad, you couldn't go to the AHL. You were not allowed to go between teams like you normally would see today, right? You call them up, you send them back down. That was not allowed because they were afraid of the spread of COVID. So he was stuck. And at this point, he was 22 years old. And if you're a 22-year-old player in general, and you're not getting ice time, you're not getting meaningful practice, that could spell disaster for your development. I think, like I said, the reason why I'm optimistic and I'm not worried about his opportunity in Boston is the fact, again, that goalies need to just get often thrown in, so to speak. He had that lost year or so on that taxi squad. The extensive depth that you talked about in Vancouver really put him on his back foot. But I think whoever's idea it was for him to request the trade, that's the best idea anyone could have possibly had for him, because the way that Boston then handled him, they had to have seen something there, right? The technical foundation is what is going to be the most important aspect of any player's game, whether you are a skater or a goaltender. If you have those foundational technical skills, you can always rely on them as naturally as breathing. So you don't have to think about those things. And you can actually then use that mental ability to read the play and make decisions. You don't have to then also think, oh, I now have to place my foot here and do this. And in Boston, the way that they developed their goaltenders, they basically were saying, we don't care who you are or where you've played, we care that you play. And that is a massively huge philosophical difference in how they handle their goaltenders. And as we've said before, I think that shows in the fact that Boston hasn't had a gap in goaltending in 15 years minimum since Tim Thomas. So that kind of idea and that approach really makes, I think, a huge difference, not just in how they can grow and develop these goalies, but then also just as a person, knowing that the organization doesn't care about where you came from. We just care that you get the practice and that you get the training you need. So they sent him to this ECHL, which may have initially seemed like a demotion, so to speak. I know for me, when I heard that we got this kid, I'm like, why did we get somebody to just bury way down in Maine? Okay. But it actually ended up doing the opposite of that, which was it gave him the chance to start games, play back to back, face a significant number of shots.
He lost development being
did.
in that Vancouver Canucks organization. And in essence, the Bruins and the Canucks traded one struggling draft pick for another, in which we sent Jack Studnicka to them.
Yeah.
So to your earlier point about we're seemingly on a better page, the organization is when developing goalies than we are when developing younger players.
And that time in Maine gave him the opportunity to grow his confidence. He was 13-7-0 with a .916 save percentage there. That's fantastic. And he worked hard. The organization was saying, we want to see what you can do. And he responded. He knew he had a lot to prove. He knew he had to work on his game again because he didn't have that. And so he earned his spot in Providence. And it can still be hard to be seen. As a goalie, he had to work really hard, and he didn't get automatically put in as the starter in Providence. That was during the time when Brandon Bussey was there. So Bussey was the one who was really running the show there. But they gave him opportunity. They brought him in because he earned it, and he kept earning his time. And I think that gradual increase in his workload and him having that right attitude is really what then turned him into an ECHL regular to an AHL regular to goalie of the year.
Right. And an MVP. To win an MVP as a goalie in a league is pretty significant, right?
Yeah.
Shows the depth of what he did for the team, the Providence Bruins, and what he's accomplished as a player in his craft. And he's also been compared to Tim Thomas in that and we all remember Tim Thomas. He had a very unorthodox way at times of playing goalie. He might not have been the most technically sound, and Tim Thomas was really not known for his butterfly style. He liked to spend a lot of time batting at pucks and making this, let me just splay myself out type of save. Not a bad comparison.
Right.
Not a bad comparison in terms of your style of play, but he does like to challenge shooters.
Yes.
Rather than just sitting deep in the net, which I do admire. I do like that style of play. I think sometimes that we want to see goalies that limit their movements in net. However, there are those instances where you don't mind seeing the goalie come out a little bit or be a little bit more aggressive with their stick play.
To know that he's the type of goalie that is also going to be aggressive, like a Tim Thomas, you have to have a hell of a lot of confidence in understanding the play in front of you to play that way.
To play that way. Now, we'll see how that translates as he gets games in the NHL. Maybe there needs to be a little bit of tweaking done to that, or maybe the Bruins will just say, we're just going to let this kid do what he knows how to do.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know that if we probably will see him will we see him at rookie camp? Maybe.
Well, that's
because you can be a player.
I know, but
we saw
I'm just wondering if he'll be more training camp rather than rookie camp. Technically, he will be a rookie, but if he's your backup to Swayman, right?
I think yes, for two reasons. One, again, for the goalies, you just get them in. You get them in, you get them in, you get them in, right? But we have seen in the past with skaters who most definitely got called up partway through a season or ended the season in Boston, like Mason Lohrei or Johnny Beecher. They were at rookie camp because it was technically still within the purview of their rookie season. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him and then giving him, obviously, the semi-guaranteed spot in training camp, knowing he's going in as someone with a spot on the roster. I think that is still something that happens. And I'm really excited to see what this kid can do.
I am too, and I think a lot of people are too. And I think a lot of people are not breathing a sigh of relief, but maybe saying or acknowledging the fact that finally the Bruins understand that the scope and purpose of having these guys down at the AHL level is to develop them so that you can bring them up to whatever role or position you have open and available at your NHL club. Maybe this is the start of an organizational shift in how things are looked at down in Providence, to which I say it's about freaking time that we make a shift of this nature. My whole thing is, okay, you're here now. Take every advantage of the opportunity that is set forth in front of you.
The only downside,
Oh boy.
He's 27. He's not a baby. Now, 27, you're like, but wait, Caroline, you talk all the time about how goalies get to be their best at 27, 28. Yes, 100%. I'm not worried about his play. I'm thinking long term. This is not a guy who is going to take on the mantle from Jeremy Swayman when Swayman's time.
No. You're right. Although I will say maybe the AHL miles are not to the same degree as the NHL miles, even though he's 27. But there is validity to your point, and I think that's why the Bruins have drafted or signed an abundance of goalies during their young. So I am glad that they're looking ahead, because one of the biggest criticisms I have had with regard to the Bruins is, and a lot of other people, is they never planned for what they knew was going to happen somewhere down the road. You knew Patrice Bergeron wasn't going to play forever. You knew David Krejci wasn't going to play forever. And you never planned appropriately, which is why we find ourselves in the roster situation that we're in right now. I'm glad they're not going down that same road with goaltenders.
Boston also has in the pipeline behind DiPietro, Simon Zajac, who is 25 years old, who I have seen play and is also a fantastic goaltender. But again, he's 25. So if you're thinking about, okay, who's then going to be that next goalie? We don't have him yet. He's not there yet. But we've seen a number of goalies with a lot of potential drafted in the early stages of their development. And whoever it is, when the time comes for Jeremy Swayman to retire, I am not worried about the Bruins' ability to find somebody to seamlessly integrate into the crease, because they've done it so well for the last 15 years. I have no concerns whatsoever. And I'm excited to see this kid. I love a young goalie with the right attitude who has overcome so much
adversity and has, I don't want to say a chip on his shoulder, but he's got I need to prove it attitude all the way through. And so this is the next step in that. I need to prove and show to everyone this is where I belong at the NHL.
And I think this is going to be really beneficial for Jeremy Swayman. It's always a really good thing to have both an excellent tendy partner, but also having someone that you can compete against a little bit. And they are of similar age, but obviously Swayman has more experience, but DiPietro has a lot more to prove. And I think that they're going to have a really great dynamic to make each other better.
And I think to your point too, I think this is a good opportunity too for Swayman to be somewhat of take on a mentor role, so to speak.
Yes, the leadership piece. Goalies don't tend to have that degree of relationship with a lot of the other players. Like, yes, Swayman is a leader. He can mentor some of the younger players in terms of this is how you get ready for playoffs, but nobody else plays the role that he plays on a team.
So,
Him and one other guy. That's it.
And, yeah, a new era. And we say the dawning of a new era when it comes to goaltending for the Boston Bruins. So good for DiPietro for earning his opportunity and now take advantage of it to its fullest. So that will, unless you have any other thoughts to add, that will conclude our conversation on what's our nickname for him? It sounds like Dippy. And it's not meant in any kind of derogatory manner. We just think it's kind of cute. But we're looking forward to see him either at rookie camp or at big boy camp. We'll likely see him potentially in both places. So as always, folks, thank you for listening. Please make sure you like and subscribe for more content. Please consider leaving us a rating and a review to help other Bruins fans find us. You can support our podcast by joining our Patreon or following us on our socials at Tape to Tape MK and on Substack at substack.com. Any closing thoughts, my friend?
Go Bruins.
Go Bruins.